Eva, how are you? Glad you're here. Hello, hi Emmy. I am only slightly late. Only slightly late this week. I feel like it's an improvement. Hi, glad you could make it, Ray. Oh my god, there's a hair literally, I think, right in front of my eye. I think it's like in my eyelash. Uh, oh no. I think it'll be fine. Not sure. Hello. So who we got? We have Emmy, Ray, Lady Eva. I gotta check here. I am super tired today. Ray knows why. Crimson, there you are. Hey, Caligo. I was so tired. I got like, oh, there it is again. Oh no. Okay. I swear, everything was fine until if I don't focus on it, it'll come back. I I don't know what that's about. I feel like there's a hair just waiting right in front of my eyelash to fly into my eyeball at the most inopportune moment. Some people have things about like eyeball stuff. So I might, if you see me veer off camera, that's it means I had to pull what is probably, I would assume, a cat hair out of my eyeball. Since everything I own is covered in cat hair. Speaking of which, hi Spike. He decided to stay in here today, but he is so He is so sleepy. Him sleepy boy. And he might come and join us later, but he is fast asleep. He is enjoying the soft cello music I have going in the background. Him's a good boy though. Him's not going crazy, so it's not going to be too much of a detriment to the proceedings. So yeah, I got like 2.5 hours of sleep last night, and I was hypnotized this morning at 11 a.m. Why 11 a.m.? Well, it's supposed to be yesterday at 3, and my therapist had to cancel, so we had to reschedule for 11 a.m. this morning. So I got about 2 hours of sleep, and then when I got there, she was like, do you think you can? Because you can't just fall asleep during the hypnotism. And I was like, no, I'm well aware. I know that's not the goal. I did not, in fact, fall asleep. I can't fall asleep in a foreign environment. It has to be in a specific room in my house, or it won't work. So I would like to say that was the cat hair, but it was not. I'm sure it's. I either got it and don't know that I got it, so I'm going to be filled with apprehension the entire time, or it's going to come back later at the worst possible time. I can't tell you which one it is yet, but we'll see. And for all the weeks to me be short on sleep, I made tea for this because I'm going to need it. We got a large cast of characters today. And if you don't know what we're doing here, what we normally do here, This is a book club. I normally read you guys a story, a little bedtime story. We're working our way through Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. We are on book 4, Map of Days, starting in chapter 16, so well over, almost at the tail end of the book here. So if this is your first time joining us, you can go to the YouTube link in my bio and find the rest of the Miss Peregrine series. Save one entry, which I'm working on. I just have to finish editing that. And then I will get that uploaded and that will be complete. But we are almost done with Map of Days. We don't have too much longer to go. And I know last week, in particular, I know one of you is very fond of Bronwyn, Lady Eva. I'm so sorry. And if you were hoping that we were going to follow up on that, I gotta tell you, you're gonna be so disappointed with the way this goes. Garlic bread, bam, I've spread my wisdom. Good. Spread the gospel of garlic bread. That was the best random comment I've ever gotten. I love that. Anyway, I just had garlic bread last week. I'm so sorry, lady. You too, Spooky C. But yeah, we're gonna venture forth. We're gonna go out to lunch. I wish I could tell you it's more than that. It's, if you think I'm making a joke right now, it's not a joke. We're gonna go out to lunch. And unfortunately, but I mean, I suppose you could have garlic bread there. They definitely have garlic bread. Not only do they have garlic bread, they probably have the best garlic bread. Anyway, but at what price? Anyway, the point is, we're gonna go out to lunch, and there's gonna be a wide variety of voices. So I don't know how well I'm gonna get through the chapter. I'm gonna try my best. I've made tea, and we're gonna see how it goes. And depending on circumstances and how well it works out, we might roll right into 17, or we might stop there. It just depends on how well I get through it. You'll understand what I mean when we get in here. Trigger warning, maybe loud yelling. Shrill, even. Not quite opera, but definitely not enjoyable. Dad pulled off the opera really well, and we are all so proud of him. Tea sounds nice. Tea is nice, and you should make yourself some. And then you can join me. I have an Earl Grey lavender. Very soothing on the throat. Yeah, not doing that again. Yeah. I appreciate your efforts, and you get a shout out in this episode. I did not charge my phone, so I gotta be quick. Oh, good. You have a matcha tea latte? Excellent. Alright, so now that we got our tenor through bass, fine, soprano is rough. Yeah. I couldn't even do it. I had to enlist you to do it. That's how I know. I was like, I'll wreck my whole system if I do that. The chapter is ending immediately after that line is where it was for me. That's how I knew. I was like, ugh. So I'm extremely gracious. I'm exceedingly grateful that you took that upon yourself. You get cheesecake when you come over tonight. And your hat, which you left over here. And I only realized it about an hour after you had left. So there was no time to text you within the 6-minute window it takes to walk to your house to get you to come pick it up. And I was like, we'll take care of that next week. Good, because I didn't steal it intentionally. Anyway. So we're going to get into it. Who wants to go out to lunch? if you need a short recap, we made contact with Noor. The kids made contact with Noor. They were told by H that they should abandon the quest. They did not. A sort of tumultuous encounter ensued with a bunch of black suits. They got Bronwyn, unfortunately. Now we are no longer even looking for a loop. They are debating on whether or not to take Noor with them back to London and Miss Peregrine's group to... I got home and remembered I left it there. Alright, 2, so we're ready to go. Well, with nothing else to cover, chapter 16. We weren't looking for a loop. At the moment, we wanted anything but to find a loop. All that was in our minds was getting Bronwyn to a hospital. We jumped out of the train at the next stop, hardly even looking to see where we were, and climbed the steps out of the subway station. Lily held on to Millard's arm, and Emma, Noor, and I helped prop up Bronwyn, who was weak but still conscious. As she shuffled heavily up the steps and along the sidewalk, we were in Manhattan now, and the buildings were taller, the sidewalks bustling. I dug out my phone to call 911. Enoch approached people on the street shouting, "Hospital! Where's a hospital?" This turned out to be an effective strategy. We were pointed down a particular street by a kind, concerned lady who hustled us in the right direction, asking after Bronwyn. Of course, we didn't want to tell her anything, didn't want her following us into the emergency room, or asking our names. I was already imagining having to bring in an Imbrin to memory wipe her, and the doctors and nurses. So we pretended we'd been joking about the injury, and after a block she stormed off, understandably angry. The hospital was just ahead. I could see the sign hanging from a building a block away, and then the sweetest, richest smell of cooking food hit my nose, and my steps began to slow. "Do you smell that?" said Enoch. "That's rosemary toast. And goose liver pâté." "No way," said Emma. "It's shepherd's pie." Our momentum was waning. "I'd know that smell anywhere," said Noor. "Dosas. Paneer masala dosas." "What are you guys talking about?" said Lily. "And why are you stopping?" "She's right. We have to get Bronwyn to a doctor," said Millard. "Although, that might be the most aromatic coq au vin I've ever laid nostrils on." Our progress had been completely arrested. We were standing in front of a storefront with drawn shades that might have been a restaurant, though there was no sign for one. Just a placard that read, "Open always, and all are welcome." "You know, I feel okay," Bronwyn said. "A bit peckish, though, now that you mention it." She didn't seem particularly okay. Her speech was slurred, and she was still leaning heavily on our arms. But the part of my brain that registered this seemed to be wrapped in cotton. "She's bleeding," Emma said, "and the hospital is right there." Bronwyn looked down at her shirt. "Not bleeding much," she said, though the patch of red appeared to be spreading. There were two desires at war inside me. One was a voice shouting, "Go to the hospital, dumbass!" But I could barely hear it over the other voice, which sounded weirdly like my dad's. It was insisting in this peppy, dorky way that it was getting near dinner time, and shouldn't we try New York food while we're here, and Gosh darn it, why don't we just stop in for dinner real quick? We all seemed to agree, except Lily and Emma. But even their objections were starting to fade. I pushed the door open and ushered everyone inside. It was indeed a restaurant. A small, old place with checkered tablecloths and caned-back chairs and a soda fountain along one wall. Behind the counter stood a waitress in an apron and a paper hat, and she was smiling like she'd been waiting for us all day. We were the only ones there. Here is a picture of the waitress for you. You kids look hungry, she said, bouncing on her heels. Oh, we are, said Bronwyn. The waitress didn't seem to notice the blood on Bronwyn's shirt. In fact, you look like you're downright starving. Yes, said Enoch, his voice a bit robotic. Starving. What kind of restaurant is this? Asked Noor. I thought I smelled paneer. Oh, we've got everything, said Bernice with a small wave of her hand. Everything you could ever want. Had she said her name? How did I know it? My brain felt like mush. The little voice that wondered if this was a good idea had faded to a whisper. Lily's objections, too, had quieted. The last thing I'd heard her say was, You guys can stay here if you want, but I'm taking your friend to the hospital. But her efforts to drag Bronwyn out by the elbow hadn't been very effective. You can't drag Bronwyn anywhere she doesn't want to go. We don't have any money, I said, and the disappointment I felt as I realized I had left our cash in the trunk of the car was so total. It felt like I was suddenly in mourning. It just so happens we're having a special promotion today, said Bernice. Everything's on the house. Really? Said Bronwyn. That's right. Your money's no good here. We bellied up to the counter and sat on the fixed plastic stools, all in a row. There was no menu. We simply told Bernice what we wanted, and she shouted the orders to an unseen line cook in the back. A remarkably short time later, a bell dinged, and she began to bring out plate after plate of food. A rooster cooked in wine for Millard, paneer masala dosas and a mango lassi for Noor, a lamb roast trimmed with mint jelly for Emma, a double cheeseburger and fries and a strawberry shake for me, a lobster for Bronwyn complete with a shell cracker and a bib with a picture of a lobster on it, a steaming Korean bibimbap with an egg cracked over it for Lily. It was a more eclectic array than I thought possible in any restaurant, much less a greasy old diner with only one person working the kitchen. But the part of my brain that was objecting to all this had gotten very quiet. Don't eat that. You should leave. This is a bad idea. Stop now before it's too late. I don't remember eating my double cheeseburger and fries and strawberry shake. But the next thing I knew, the shake was drained, there were only greasy crumbs left on my plate, and my head was heavy. So heavy. Oh, honey, Bernice trotted out from behind the counter, a hand to her chest. "You look beat." And I was. I really was. "I'm so tired," I heard Emma say, and a murmur of agreement rippled through my friends. "Why don't you head on upstairs and catch a little sleep?" "We have to go," said Nora. She was trying to get up from her counter stool, but couldn't seem to work up the momentum. "Do you?" said Bernice. "I don't think you do." "Jacob," Emma whispered in my ear. She sounded drunk. "We gotta go." I know. We had been hypnotized somehow. I knew it. It was like what the Mermaid Fantasyland peculiars had tried to do to us, but this time we had taken the bait. "We've got room upstairs with beds all made for you, just through here." Now that she'd said it, I found that I could make myself stand. In fact, we were all standing, and Bernice was pushing us toward the exit, a strange tunnel of hallway painted with red and white candy stripes. We let ourselves be pushed. The hallway seemed to elongate as we approached it. I heard a scuffle and turned to see Bernice barring Lily's way with her arm. "Hey," I said vaguely. "Be nice to her." Lily was speaking. I saw her mouth moving, her throat constricting with the effort, but her voice did not, or could not, reach my ears. "We'll be back soon, Lil. Just wait here," Nor said. Of course, Lily wouldn't have been able to join us even if she had been allowed to walk down the hall. Around the halfway point, I felt the rush in my head and the drop in my stomach, and whoop, the loop took us. Lily was no longer behind us, and up ahead, the candy-striped hallway now had an endpoint, a staircase. "It's just upstairs," Bernice's voice echoed, though she was nowhere to be seen. We dragged ourselves slowly up, one step at a time, and as we mounted the landing, I felt the last of my willpower dissipate. We were at the mercy of whatever siren was luring us along, and all we could seem to do, for now, was obey. On the landing were two young girls on their hands and knees, engaged in what seemed to be a thorough, inch-by-inch examination of the floorboards. When we came into the hall, they stopped what they were doing and looked up at us. "Have you seen a doll?" the older girl asked. "Frankie lost one of her dolls." She seemed to be telling a joke, but she didn't crack a smile. Here's a picture of the girls. "Sorry," said Nora. "We ordered a sleep," said Millard, sounding confused. "Through there," said the older girl, nodding to the door behind her. We stepped past them. "Run!" I thought I heard one hiss. "Run while you can!" But when I turned back to look again, they were staring at the floor, having returned to their methodical search. I felt like I was moving through a dream. Through the door was a small, neat kitchen area. A young boy sat at a table, and a man in a bow tie stood over him. There were puzzles and a little tower of stacking blocks on the table, as if the man were giving the boy some kind of examination. When he heard us come in, the man lifted his arm and pointed to the next room. "Through there." He didn't even look at us. His attention was locked on the boy. "Sanguis habemus," he said. "Corpus edimus. Mater semper certa est," the boy replied while staring at nothing. "Mater semper certa est." "The mother is always certain," Miller translated. The teacher straightened, then banged on the wall. "Keep it down in there," he shouted, not at us. I couldn't tell what had upset him until we were nearly out of the room and into the next one, and I heard the singing. A woozy, tuneless voice moaned, "Happy birthday, dear Frankie. Happy birthday to you." I couldn't make my feet move any faster, though I would have run if they'd let me. The singer was a man in clown makeup and a bone-white wig. He was seated on a daybed, bellied up to a small cocktail table, and was pouring himself a drink from a bottle. He seemed to be stuck. He would sip from the glass in his hand, splash a bit more from the bottle into the glass, sing a few words, then sip again. When he saw us, he raised his glass and said, "Chin Chin, happy birthday, Frankie." "Happy birthday," I said involuntarily. The clown seemed to freeze like that, with his glass raised and his mouth open, and from the back of his throat there came a sound like something unwinding, barely intelligible words. "Let me sleep." And here is the man, the teacher, and the boy. And there is the clown. "Come in here," called a shrill voice from the next room. We came all in a bunch into a bedroom crowded with dolls. Every available space was crammed with them. There were dolls on the floor, dolls on the shelves, on the walls, dolls overflowing from a big armchair in the corner and from an iron-railed bed. There were so many that I didn't notice the girl among them, on the bed, half buried in an avalanche of little porcelain faces, until she spoke a second time. "Sit down," she barked, and began flinging the dolls off her. We sat down on the floor, and the action automatic. I heard Bronwyn groan. Her pain must have been getting worse. "I didn't say you could make noise," the girl said. She wore a cotton nightshirt and a yellow corduroy pants that looked like they were from the 1970s or 80s, and when she spoke, her upper lip curled into a sneer.
Well, who are you?
I felt my tongue unlock and started to answer. My name is Jacob, and I come from a town in Florida.
Bored! Bored! Bored!
She shouted. She pointed to Emma.
You!
A jolt went through Emma, and she began to speak. My name is Emma Bloom. I was born in Cornwall and came of age in a loop in Wales, and...
Boring!
The girl screamed and pointed at Enoch. I'm Enoch O'Connor, he said, and we have something in common. The girl seemed intrigued. As he spoke, she stood up from the bed where she'd been lying among her dolls and walked over to him. I can make dead things move using the hearts of living things, Enoch said. I have to take them apart first, but the girl snapped her fingers, and Enoch's mouth clapped shut.
You're nice looking,
she said, tracing a finger along the line of Enoch's jaw.
But when you talk, it gets ruined.
She smushed the tip of his nose with her finger.
Boop. More for you later.
I am reading Map of Days, the 4th installment of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and here's a little girl. She turned to Bronwyn.
You.
My name is Bronwyn Bruntley, and I'm quite strong, and my brother Victor was also...
Boring!
The girl screamed.
Poop!
Feet scurried towards us. The bow-tied teacher appeared in the doorway. Yes?
I don't want any more dolls like these, Poop. Just look at them. Do they seem like they would be fun to play Monopoly with? Do they?
No.
That's right. They do not.
She kicked a pile of dolls and they flew everywhere.
Well, him I like.
She pointed at Enoch.
But the rest are horrible and boring.
I'm very sorry, Frankie.
What should we do with them, Poop?
She turned to offer us a quick aside.
His name isn't really Poop. I just call him that because I can call anyone anything I like.
Perhaps we should eat them, Poop suggested. Frankie sneered.
You always want to eat them. It's weird, Poop. And anyway, that gave me a stomachache last time.
Or we could sell them.
Sell them? To who?
To whom? The teacher said, and then he put a hand over his mouth and turned pale. The girl flew into a rage. She pointed at him, then drew a quick, invisible line downward. The teacher fell to his knees as if pulled by strings.
You do not tell me things!
Yes, Frank. Yes, ma'am. His voice was quivering. Mira sempre será es.
That right. That is extremely correct.
A small line of dolls was marching toward him across the room.
Because you're so obedient, Poop, I'm only gonna have them chew off one of your legs.
The teacher repeated the phrase over and over, faster and faster. Mater semper certa est, mater semper certa est. Until the words were slurring together, the dolls swarmed him, grasping and champing their porcelain teeth. The man was crying, sobbing, but he didn't struggle. When he seemed about to pass out, the girl spread her arms and then brought her hands together, and the clap made all the dolls go limp and fall over.
Oh, Poop, you're so funny.
The man gathered himself, wiping his face, and wobbled to his feet. Where was I? He cleaned his throat. You could sell them to the animist, the Mentats, the weatherman. He pressed a trembling hand to his neck, quickly checking his pulse, then tucked it behind his back. But, as always, the Untouchables are paying the highest rate.
Blah! I hate them. But as long as none set foot here.
I'll call them and arrange a sales meeting.
I'm not selling him, though.
She pointed at Enoch, then traced a U in the air with 2 fingers. Enoch's lips curled into an exaggerated, grotesque smile. That's fine, Frankie. That's very good.
I know it's good. The rest of them, I don't care. I just have one condition. If whoever buys them does something nasty to them, I get to watch.
After a long and dreamless blank, I woke up, tied to a chair. We were spaced out, all in a row, our feet bound to the chair legs and our hands strapped behind us. Emma, Bronwyn, Noor, and even Millard, the ropes hovering around what looked like an empty seat. All but Enoch. He was nowhere to be seen. We were on the stage of an old theater, arranged behind a tattered yellow curtain. If I craned my neck, I could see ropes and pulleys behind us and lights along a catwalk above. We weren't gagged, and yet I couldn't speak. I couldn't even persuade my mouth to open. Then I heard voices on the other side of the curtain. They seemed to be talking about us.
They were trespassing on my property, trying to steal from me.
It was the psychotic little girl, Frankie.
I had every right to hang them, but I'm showing mercy instead, and doing you all a favor.
That's funny. Usually it's you who's trying to steal from us, said a gravelly male voice. Last specimen I bought from you turned to corpse dust in only 2 days.
It's not my fault if you don't take care of them right,
said Frankie. The seller isn't responsible for user error. An oily-sounding voice I recognized. Poop, the tutor. You sold me junk. I'm owed a free one. It sounded like a scuffle was about to break out, but then a lady shouted, Stop it! No brawling allowed on neutral ground. Things settled down. The gravelly voice said, You've wasted too much of my day already, Frankie. Let's get your dog and pony show started.
Fine! Poop!
With a loud squeak and a puff of dust, the curtain began to rise. Beyond it was an empty and decaying theater. The seats were torn, the balcony level was teetering at a precarious angle and looked as if it might collapse at any moment. On the stage were 6 people. Their gazes were trained on us, but they seemed to be watching one another just as closely, each maintaining a wary distance from the rest. Frankie and Poop stood closest to us. Frankie wearing a coat with tails and holding a baton as if she were the ringleader of a circus. It seems amazing to me now, but I had no way of knowing then who the others were. That was probably for the best, because if I'd known their reputations, I might have been too intimidated to think straight. Frankie had reached out to the most notorious, peculiar gangs in New York, and the leaders of 3 had made an appearance. Front and center was a young fellow with hair like a cresting wave. He wore an immaculate suit, shoes caked in red mud, and a thin, threatening smile. His name was Rec Donovan. Standing behind him were his 2 flunkies, a demure girl who was casually reading a newspaper, and a boy who didn't strike me as someone who could read at all, his mouth hanging open in dim amazement. Rec was staring at me while having an argument with someone else, a young-looking girl in an immaculate white dress tied with a huge silk bow. Her hair was coiffed in complicated ironed curls that cascaded down her back. Her face was milky white and smooth and very cold. The mouth of an inverse of Rex turned down at the corners and always moving, as if she were chewing something or talking to herself silently. The strangest thing about her was the cloud of black smoke that hovered around her head and shoulders, churning slowly, but never dissipating. It narrowed to a funnel shape that seemed to emanate from her right ear. Her name was Angelica, and she was alone. Rec hated to be photographed, but one day I would see a blurred snapshot of him posing much as he sat before me now. Angelica, on the other hand, loved the camera, and one portrait of her in particular, moping on a swing, smoke cloud wafting to one side, will become famous among American peculiars, framed and hung with pride by some, used as target practice or a wanted poster by others. Here's picture 1 of Rec. And here is the other of Angelica. Rec and Angelica were arguing about someone who hadn't shown up yet, the representative for the Untouchables, and Frankie was refusing to start without him. "There's no chance he's going to show his hairy mug here," Rec said, "or anywhere else in the city for that matter." He had a melodious voice tinged with a light Irish accent. "I hope he does," said his gape-mouthed flunky. "I'll tie him up and turn him in for the bounty."
"That I'd pay to see," said Angelica. "None of you are getting that bounty anyhow. Dogface and his clan aren't afraid of you. Leo and his goons, yes, but not you." She spoke in a kind of lilting sigh, the sentences starting high and chirpy before fluttering down to the floor. Rec glanced at his pocket watch, uncrossed his legs, and stood. "One more minute, Frankie, then I take my associates and blow." "Poop! Make him sit!"
Frankie shouted. "Please, sit down, Mr. Donovan," said the tutor. "I'll never take orders from someone who lets a child call him names," said Rec.
"You're gonna regret talking about me like that,"
Frankie said.
"One day, you're all gonna beg for my forgiveness."
Before their argument could escalate, there was a loud slam from the rear of the theater. A set of double doors swung wide, and a small figure rushed in.
"There he is," said Frankie. "Told you he'd show."
He charged down the aisle, peeling off a hat and high-collared coat that had obscured his face. "Sorry I'm late," he said, in a sharp New York accent. "Traffic was a nightmare." He bounded up the steps and into the stage lights, and I was shocked to see his face every square inch, but his eyeballs and lips was covered in long, thick fur. This was Dogface, the leader of the Eldridge Street Untouchables, the most despised peculiar clan in New York. "Dogface!" Rex shouted. "I truly didn't think you'd have the stones to show yourself after the beating we gave you last week." "Is that what you're calling it?" Dogface replied, licking 2 fingers and brushing a lock of fur from his eyes. "Honey, I remember 3 of yours getting carted off to the healer, and only 2 of mine." "I think you forgot how to count," said Rex. "Just stay out of my territory, or it won't be the healer they take you to. It'll be the dead house." "Wah, wah, wah," the furry boy said, mocking him. "Stay out of my territory. Someone needs to have his diaper changed." Reg, who had sat down again, jumped out of his chair, but one of his flunkies held him back. Dogface didn't flinch, chuckling to himself as Rec made a show of needing to be dragged back to his seat to prevent a brawl. "I wouldn't try it," said Dogface. "I got 3 boyos waiting with their ears to the door, and if they so much as hear me bark, you're a dead man."
"Enough of this tiresome peacocking," said Angelica, her face placid but her smoke cloud dense and swirling.
"Yes, may we please begin?" said the tutor. Everyone took a seat. Though the tension between the clan leaders was palpable, their focus gradually returned to my friends and me. Here's Dogman. Dogface. Dogman. Dog guy. Dog guy. "What have you got for us today, Frankie?" Dogface said. "More rubes from the sticks." "I don't need any more parlor trick peculiars," said Rec. "I want genuine talent this time." "Yeah," said Dogface. "He's got enough dead-weight morons in his crew as it is." Rec shot him a nasty look.
No, these here are the real deal," said Frankie, "and they're gonna be real expensive."
"We'll see," said Angelica. "One thing I care about is can they rob?" said Rec. "I need muscle. I need lookouts." "I need chameleons," said Dogface. "My crew have been getting noticed by normals lately, and we've had some close shaves." "You could surely use one," Rex said, laughing.
"This one's invisible,"
said Frankie. She spun around and poked Millard with her baton, and he squeaked. We still couldn't talk. Said Rec, drumming his fingers together. "I could be interested." "Ain't ugly enough for your crew," said Dogface. "Better leave 'em to me."
"I need weather folk as ever," Angelica said with a sigh. "Wind shifters, cloud seeders, competent ones." All right.
said Frankie, waving her baton in our direction.
Tell him what you can do.
I felt my jaw slacken, and my tongue, which had nearly gone numb, suddenly go all pins and needles as the feeling flooded back. It was hard to talk at first. Bronwyn tried to speak too, but it sounded like we had forgotten how to form consonants. Dogface tossed up his hands. "What are they, idiots?" "Of course they are. How'd you think Frankie was able to catch him in the first place?" said Rec.
Lose my telegraph number,
Angelica said and stood up from her chair.
Your tongues are just tired, Frankie pleaded. Don't leave.
Frankie started to beat Bronwyn with her baton and scream,
"Talk right!"
Seeing that made me so furious that something jarred loose in my head, and I found my voice again and shouted, "Stop it!" Frankie turned, enraged, and came at me with the baton. She had to pass Emma to reach me, though, and Emma had burned through her wrist restraints without anyone noticing. Though her feet were still tied to the chair, she was able to lunge at the girl with the top half of her body and tackle Frankie to the floor. Emma got Frankie in a chokehold, one arm around her neck and a flaming hand held beside her face.
"Stop! Stop! Stop!"
Frankie screamed, wiggling and writhing. She seemed to have lost her telekinetic grip on Emma, and though she was trying mightily, she couldn't get it back.
"Let us go, or I melt her face off," Emma yelled. "I mean it. I'll really do it." "Oh, please do," said Angelica. "She's such a pain."
The others laughed. They seemed surprised, but not particularly upset by the sudden turn of events.
"Why are you just standing there?" Frankie shouted. "Murder them!"
Dogface crossed his ankles and laced his fingers behind his head. "Oh no, Frankie. It's just got interesting."
"I agree," said Angelica. "For once, I'm glad I got out of bed today."
Emma looked annoyed.
"None of you care if she dies?"
I do," the tutor said half-heartedly.
"You can't do this to me!" Frankie shouted. "You're mine! I caught you!"
I was starting to feel control returning to my arms and legs, as well as my tongue. The girl's spell had been broken. I looked at my friends, and I could see them beginning to move their limbs as well. "I say we split 'em evenly," said Rec, and then he drew a fat-barreled pistol from his waist belt and cocked it. "One each for you, 2 for me." "I've got a better idea," said Dogface. He dropped on all fours and snarled ferociously. "I get all of them."
"That won't work out so well for you,"
Angelica warned him. Her cloud flashed bright white, then rumbled. What I had thought was smoke was really a storm cloud.
"And don't even think about using that fire on us," she said to Emma.
"Nobody is taking us," I said. "Nobody's buying us either." "When the Inbring Council finds out what you're doing, you're all in serious trouble," said Millard. That comment prompted a few raised eyebrows. Rex stepped forward, his tone suddenly a bit more respectful, and he said, "You've misunderstood us. We don't buy people. That sort of trade has been illegal for a long time. But we will occasionally make monetary bids to post bail for peculiars guilty of criminal offenses if we like said peculiars." "What criminal offenses?" Millard said. You're the criminals? Trespassing on Frankie's turf, said Dogface, and Frankie, who was too scared to talk, nodded vigorously. She trapped us, Bronwyn said. Drugged us with food. Ignorantia legis neminim excusat, said the tutor. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. We post your bail, Rhett continued. You skip jail, then repay us with your service for a period of 3 months. After that, many people decide to stay on with us. Those who are still alive, said Dogface with a sly grin. Our initiations ain't for the faint of heart. You, miss, are very talented, said Angelica, taking a cautious step toward Emma and bowing slightly. I think you'd feel right at home with my clan. We're elementals like you. Let's get one thing straight, Emma said. I'm not going anywhere with you, and neither are my friends. I think you are, Dogface said. There was a loud snap as Bronwyn's ropes broke and she stood up from her chair. Don't you move, Rex shouted. I'll shoot. You shoot, I burn, said Emma. Do what she says, Frankie whimpered. Rex hesitated, then lowered his gun a little. Despite their tough talk, they really didn't want Frankie to die. Or they didn't really want to kill us. Bronwyn went to Noor's chair and snapped the ropes binding her. Thanks, Noor said, standing and rubbing her wrist. Then she swatted her hand through the air and scooped away the blinding spotlight. It was still on, shining up in the catwalk, but now its cone of light stopped high above our heads. There, that's better. She pushed her hands together, compressing the handful of light she collected, then tucked it into her cheek, where it bulged like a glowing lump of chewing gum. Mother Mary, Rex muttered under his breath. Who are you people? Said Dogface. Bronwyn had just snapped Millard's ropes, and now she was coming over to free me. They can't be from around here, said Angelica. With peculiarities like that, everyone would know their names. Remember the Whites? Said Millard. You must be joking, said Rex. They're dead or in jail now because of us. Because of him, mostly, said Bronwyn. She snapped the rope that held my wrist and then held up my arm like the winner in a foot race. We're Miss Peregrine's wards, and when she hears about what you people are doing, she and the other Imbrins are gonna bring such hell down on your heads, you won't know what hit you. That's the craziest thing I ever heard, said Rex. And I think they'll fit in just fine, said Dogface. The dynamic in the room had changed. We had earned some grudging respect from them, and the balance of power had evened, but the clan leaders were still wary of us. And of one another, and no one had let their guard down. Rex was still aiming his gun, Emma was still holding her flame to Frankie's face, Dogface was crouched on all fours, ready to pounce, and Angelica's cloud was now quietly storming, pellets of rain wetting her head and shoulders. It felt like we were dancing around a stick of lit dynamite. Yes, Wari. Yes, that is correct. Am I not pronouncing it right? Or well, I'm sorry. I got one question to ask you, and you'd best answer it true, said Rex. People like you don't come through town without a good reason. "So what are you doing here?" I suppose I thought I could talk to them like equals, but thinking back, I don't know why I said it. I was feeling proud and reckless, and the truth just came tumbling out. "We came to help her," I said, nodding at Noor. "She's a brand new peculiar who's in danger, and we're taking her home with us." There was a moment of tense quiet. What the... Why do I have to verify in the middle of... Anyway. There was a moment of tense quiet as the clan leaders digested this, then looked at one another. "You say she's new," said Dogface. "You mean uncontacted?" He leaned back on his heels, his voice rising from a snarl back to normal. "That's right," said Emma. "What's it matter?" Angelica was shaking her head, rainwater dripping off her chin. "That's bad." "Damn it," said Rek. He punched the air. "Damn it, I really wanted the fiery one on my crew." What are you talking about?" said Bronwyn. "Yeah, what just happened?" said Noor. Frankie started laughing. "Oh, you're in trouble," she said. "You shut up," said Emma. Kidnapping an uncontacted peculiar is a serious crime," said the tutor. "A very grave offense." "No one's kidnapping me," said Noor. "You're outsiders," said Rek. "And you're transporting an uncontacted across territory lines, and that means..." He let out a loud breath and stamped his foot. "I hate this." Dogface stood up and brushed off his hands. "We've got to turn you in," he said, "or we'll be accessories to the crime." "Must we?" said Angelica. "I like them more and more." "You must be joking." Dogface started pacing nervously. "If we don't report this and Leo hears about it, our lives are worth nothing, less than nothing." "I thought you weren't afraid of nobody. No man. No nothing," Angelica said. Dogface spun towards her and yelled, "Only an idiot wouldn't be afraid of Leo." Rek turned away, and when he turned back, he was holding something that looked like a small cell phone. "I hate to do this, I really do. I was looking forward to working with you, but I'm afraid I have no choice." He punched a few buttons on the device, and a moment later, a siren began to blare. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls, ceiling, the air itself. My friends and I looked at one another, then at the Americans, who had lowered their weapons and were no longer making threatening moves toward us at all anymore. They just seemed disappointed. Emma let go of Frankie. She fell to the floor. "Where's our friend?" she shouted at the girl. "What did you do with Enoch?" Frankie scurried away toward the Americans. "He's part of my collection now." She peeked out between Rek's knees. "You're not getting him back either." With that, there seemed no reason left to stay, and nothing compelling us to. The siren blared. My friends and I looked around. I think we'd better go," I said. "You don't have to tell me twice," said Emma. Emma, Noor, and I helped Bronwyn, who seemed almost her old self again, but was still a little woozy, and we ran down the stairs and up the aisle toward the back exit as fast as we could, which wasn't very. Neither the Americans nor their flunkies made the slightest attempt to stop us. We burst through the doors and out into the fading day. Running toward us were half a dozen men in 1920s era suits, carrying antique machine guns. They raised them and shouted for us to stop. A spray of bullets ricocheted off the concrete behind us. One of the men kicked my legs out from under me, and then I was lying face down on the pavement with a shoe grinding into the back of my neck. A gruff order was given. Winkum. A hood was pulled over my head. Everything went black. And that is it for chapter 16. Should we go ahead and roll into it or no? It's like not that much. But it is 20 pages. I don't know if we'll get through it. Worry is not how you say it. Have I been saying it wrong my entire life? I thought it was worry. Wary? Have I been saying that wrong my entire life? I'm gonna look it up. I'm so sorry. Wary? God damn it. Don't. Wait. Do you want me to keep going? Because it's 20 pages. And it would sort of roundly wrap everything up. But we would still have another. And that's the thing, is I know if we stop here, the next one is like a 40 page. Keep going? Okay. I was like, I'll do it. But we're probably going to roll over time. So wary. I did not realize I was saying it wrong. Okay. I was hauled onto my feet and pulled along roughly, then lifted by my arms and thrown onto a metal floor. A door slammed. I seemed to be in the back of a vehicle. I couldn't see anything through the hood they'd pulled over my head. I could hardly breathe through it. My chin ached where it had been ground into the concrete, and my wrist, bound again, chafed in their tight restraints. A big mini-cylinder engine shugged to life. I heard Emma say something, and one of the goons barked, "Shut up!" And there was a slap, then quiet, as rage coiled in my chest. The vehicle juddered and shook. No one spoke. Two things occurred to me as we waited for our fate to reveal itself: that these goons must work for Leo, the only person in New York everyone seemed to be afraid of. And that I'd lost my duffel bag. My duffel bag with Abe's operations log in it. The only thing he'd bothered to keep locked in his secret underground bunker, full of sensitive information, a near full accounting of his years as a hollow hunter, and I had lost track of it. I'd last had possession of the duffel going into Frankie's. The tutor must have taken it off me between there and the abandoned theater. Had he looked inside it? Did he know what he had? What was worse, if he threw it away, or if he read it? Not that any of that mattered now. If these really were Leo's guys and he was as terrible as everyone seemed to think he was, I might not live out the day anyway. The driver hit the brakes hard. I started to slide across the metal floor when a goon grabbed me by my neck. The vehicle stopped and I heard the doors open. We were dragged out, hustled into some kind of building, down a hall, and through a loop entrance so gentle I almost didn't realize what had happened. Then we were taken outside again, but now our environment felt and sounded different. It was cold, and the street was bustling. We had passed into an older era. The sound of people's shoes on the pavement was different, harder, because no one wore sneakers. There were cars all around us, and their engines were rougher sounding, their horns throatier, their exhaust smokier. When I stumbled twice on the uneven pavement, the man who had my arm warned me not to try anything stupid, then tore off the hood before marching me on again. I blinked against the sudden bright daylight, trying to take in the scene and figure out where I was. I knew that my life might depend on a quick escape later. It was New York, sometime in the first half of the 20th century, 1930s or 40s, I guessed. The old cars and buses were unmistakable, and every man wore a suit and hat. My captors blended in perfectly here. They'd felt comfortable taking off my hood because they no longer had to worry about me seeing where I was. They probably controlled the whole place. Shouting for help in this loop would have done me no good. The goons would have killed any normals who gave them trouble. The only things they bothered to hide, so as not to make a scene, were their machine guns, tucked inside newspapers under their arms. There's the street. We walked down the street. Nobody seemed to notice us, and I wasn't sure if that was just the way of New Yorkers, or if people here were trained to ignore Leo's men because it was better for their health. I tried to look behind me to see if my friends were there, but that earned me a slap on the back of the head. I could see my captors in front of me and to each side, and I could hear, somewhere to the rear, Dogface and Rex talking low. We turned down an alley, then walked up a loading ramp, past several men in work coveralls and into a dark warehouse. "Leo's waiting," one of the workers growled. We were marched through a kitchen buzzing with chefs and waiters who pressed themselves against the walls to let us pass, careful never to make eye contact. We walked through a ballroom, through a plush bar that was gloomy at midday but nearly half full with patrons. Then up a gilded staircase to an office. The office was big and fancy, with fine carved wood and touches of gold. At the far end, behind a hulking, mirrored, polished desk, a man sat waiting for us. He wore a black pinstripe suit with a loud purple tie and a cream-colored felt Homburg that didn't quite match the rest of his outfit. A tall man stood next to him, looking like an undertaker, all dressed in black. As I walked towards him, the man at the desk stared at me. My skin prickled like it was being probed with icicles. He was playing with a letter opener, pushing the point into the green felt of his desk, leaving little divots. His eyes shifted, and in short order, Emma, Millard, and Bronwyn were hauled up beside me. Nor was not among them. I wondered what they'd done with her, a chill of dread going through me. Then Rec, Angelica, and Rec's two flunkies were rushed in, a goon attached to each of them. Dogface was nowhere to be seen. Clearly, he'd made his escape. "Leo, good to see you. Been too long," said Rec, making a hat-tip gesture though he didn't wear a hat. His flunkies were silent. Angelica bowed. "Hello, Leo," she said, her cloud a polite size, and hugged close to her body, as if it, too, were intimidated. Leo pointed the letter opener at her. "You better not rain in here, Angel Face. I just had this carpet seen." "I won't, sir." "So," Leo aimed the opener at us. "Is them?" "That's them," said Rec. "Where's the dog boy?" "He got away," said the tall man, his voice a snaky slither. Leo gripped the letter opener a little tighter. Ain't good, Bill. People are gonna get the idea that we're soft on crime. We'll get him, Leo. You better. He looked to Rec and Angelica. Now, as for you, I heard you were attending an illegal auction. Oh, no, nothing like that, said Rec. These peculiars here, he gestured to my friends and me. We were trying to hire him. It was a job fair. Job fair, Leo chuckled. That's a new one. You sure you weren't trading them under the table? Inducing them via threats, intimidation to render services to you free of charge? No, Rec was saying. We'd never do that, said Angelica. What are you supposed to do with outsiders? Said Leo. Bring him to you, said Rec. That's right. Frankie thought they would know nobody special. That's why Frankie's a mental midget, Leo shouted. Sorting out who's nobody and who's an infiltrator ain't her department. You bring outsiders to me and I sort them out. Got it? Yes, Leo, they said in unison. Now, where's the light eater? Cooling her heels in the lounge, said Leo's man, Bill. I got Jimmy and Walker with her. Good. Don't be rough on her. We want to try and make friends first, remember. Got it, Leo. Leo turned to us, took his feet off the desk and sat forward. Where you from? He said. You're Californios, ain't ya? Mises people? I'm from Florida, I said. We're from the UK, said Bronwyn. Her voice sounded raw. We don't know who Mies is, or understand any of what you're talking about, said Emma. Leo nodded, looked down at his desk, was quiet for a strangely long moment. When he looked up again, his face had gone ruddy with anger. My name's Leo Burnham, and I run this town. Whole East Coast, said Bill. Here's how this is gonna work. I ask you questions and you answer straight. I'm not a guy you lie to. I'm not a guy whose time you waste. Leo raised his hand above his head and brought it down hard, stabbing the letter opener deep into the top of his desk. Everyone in the room jumped. Read the charges, Bill, said Leo. Bill flipped open a pad of paper. Trespassing, resisting arrest, kidnapping an uncontacted... Kidnapping an uncontacted peculiar... and lying about their identity, said Leo. Got it, Leo, said Bill, scribbling. Leo stood up from his tall chair, walked around behind it, and rested his forearms on its golden trim. After the Whites and Shadow Beast skipped town and things started to open up, he said, I knew it was only a matter of time before somebody tried to make a move on our territory. I figured they'd stop by trying to pick off one of the podunk loops on the outskirts. Missy Feynman's outfit in the Pine Barrens, Juice Barrel's joint in the Poconos, but to come after one of the most powerful ferals we've seen in I don't know how long and do it right in our backyard in broad daylight. He straightened as he said it, spittle flying in a flash of anger. That's not only brazen, it's an insult. That's the Californios saying Leo's weak. Leo's sleeping. Let's just waltz into his house and steal his piggy bank because we can get away with it. You're clearly quite upset, said Millard. And while I certainly don't want to upset you further by disagreeing with you, we simply aren't who you seem to think we are. Leo came out from behind his chair and stood in front of Millard, who had been forced to wear a striped gown that made it harder for him to slip away unnoticed. Are you from here? Leo asked, his tone even. No, replied Millard. Were you trying to remove that ferrule? What's a ferrule, exactly? Leo punched Millard in the stomach. Millard doubled over and groaned. Stop it, Emma shouted. Bill, tell him what a ferrule is. A peculiar who don't know they're peculiar and ain't yet allied with any particular clan or crew, Bill said as if reciting a memory. Feral seemed to be another word for uncontacted, but more derogatory. She was in danger, I said. We were trying to help her. By taking her out of the 5 boroughs. Leo sounded incredulous. To our loop in London, said Bronwyn, where she'd be safe from people like you. Leo's eyebrows went up. London. See, Bill, it's worse than I thought. Now we got limey peculiars coming after us, not just Los Californios. She's not one of you, and she's not yours, I said. It was her choice to come with us. Leo straightened his collar and came right up to me. His goon's grip on my arm tightened. I don't know if you're really ignorant or just pretending to be, he said quietly, but it don't matter. The law is the law, and it's the same law all over this country. That light eater's a local, and inducing her to leave is a crime. One you've admitted to. I got no choice but to make an example out of you. He raised his hand and slapped me, and it happened so fast I didn't have time to prepare myself for the blow. The shock and force of it almost knocked me over. Bill, get these punks out of my office. Find out who they are, and don't be afraid to put the screws on. We're done looking soft. You got it, Leo. I saw Emma's face as we were being dragged out, and she saw mine. I mouthed, we'll be okay. But for the first time since we'd left my house in Florida days ago, I really wasn't sure. That was the first time I met Leo, but it would not be the last. Here's a picture. Also, thank you. I feel very tentative about my accents. So, I couldn't tell you how long I spent in that cell. It felt like days, but it was probably less than 24 hours. There was no window, no sun, no furniture other than a cot and a toilet. The only light was a bare bulb that never stopped burning, and under those conditions the passage of time becomes harder to gauge, especially when you're suffering from loop lag and your body hardly knows what time it is in the first place. They brought me food in a tin bowl, water in a tin cup. Every few hours someone came to interrogate me. Usually a different person each time. At first, all they wanted to know was where I was from and who I worked with. They really seemed to believe I was from California, but lying about it. That I was a Californio, that was the word they kept using. Though I denied it in every possible way, the truth That I was part of this band of peculiars from Great Britain sounded so unlikely, given my obvious Americanness and the fact that I came from the modern day and my friends did not. It was very difficult to convince them. My story made no sense. They talked with cruel ease about killing me and the various terrible penalties for the crimes my friends and I committed. But they didn't beat me. They didn't torture me. I think it had something to do with the man down the hall. Every few hours they would take me out of the cell and walk me down to another windowless room where I would sit across from an owlish man with a tight cropped hair and round little glasses. He would stare at me for long minutes without speaking, leaning way back in his chair, nibbling on pickles. My theory is that he was trying to read my mind. I don't know if the pickles were part of his technique or if he just had an addiction to them. Eventually, he must have found out whatever it was he wanted to find out, or perhaps they got through to one of my friends' brains because my other interrogators suddenly changed their tune. Now they seem to believe me when I insisted I wasn't from California, and that I was a part of this group of peculiars from across the ocean. After that, they wanted to know all about the European peculiars, about the Imbrans, about Miss Peregrine. They were convinced the Imbrans were planning some sort of an invasion or attack. They wanted to know how many other peculiars we'd kidnapped from America, how many ferals we'd lured away. I told them none, and that we had acted alone and without the Imbrans' knowledge, and I repeated what I'd said to Leo. We'd answered a call to help an uncontacted peculiar who was in danger. We wanted to help her, and that was all. In danger? From what? My interrogator asked. He was a big guy with unshaven jowls and chalk-white hair. I figured there was no harm in telling them, so I described the people who'd been stalking her. The SUVs with blacked-out windows, the helicopter above the building site, and the men who chased us and shot Bronwyn with some kind of tranquilizer dart. I ain't an educated man, said my interrogator. But one thing I know back to front is our enemies. I know what they look like, how they dress, what they eat for breakfast, their mother's names, and these people don't fit none of their descriptions. The interrogator guy. I swear, it's true, I said. The Imbrans had nothing to do with it. Miss Peregrine had nothing to do with it. This girl was in danger and we just wanted to help. My interrogator burst out laughing. Just wanted to help. He leaned in so close I could smell his skin, sour like menthol and night sweats. I seen an Imbran once. In Schenectady, old lady lived in the woods, about 20 kids. They followed her around like little ducks, slept in the same bed, followed her to the John. He shook his head. Nobody in this world just wants to help, and no wards and no Imbran ever acted on their own. I felt a swell of bitterness and wounded pride. My grandfather did. Why keep it a secret? I couldn't let them think the Imbrans were making moves against them. Who knew what sort of consequences that could have? He ran a crew that fought Hologas and helped peculiars who were in danger. People knew him as Gandhi. My interrogator wasn't laughing anymore. He was writing down everything I said on a little pad. He died earlier this year, I continued, and he wanted me to take over for him. At least I think he did. We got this mission from an associate of his. The interrogator looked up from his pad. You say one of Gandhi's associates is still alive? The way he was staring at me gave me a chill. I knew then I had made an error. No. I acted like I was confused. I meant we got the mission from a machine. I lied. One of those teletype printers. The orders just printed out while I was standing near it, like it knew I was there, but I assumed it was from an old associate of my grandfather's. I wanted to bury what I'd said about H, but it was too late. The interrogator closed his pad. "You've been very helpful," he said, and he winked and scraped back his chair. "We didn't mean to step on any toes," I said quickly. "We didn't know about your territory or laws or anything like that." Keys rattled in the door and it opened. The interrogator smiled. "You have a nice day." "20 minutes later, they dragged me in to see Leo. The room was empty but for him, the man holding me, and Leo's funereal right-hand man, Bill. Leo came at me as soon as I got through the door, got right up into my face. "Your grandfather was a murderer, you knew that, right?" I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. He was clearly unhinged. "Gandhi, or whatever you call him. His name was Abraham Portman," I said quietly. "Kidnapping, murder. Man was sick in the head. Look at me." I raised my eyes to meet his. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh yeah?" he said. "Bill, give me the file on Gandhi." Bill went over to a filing cabinet and started rifling through it. "He was a good man," I said. "He fought monsters. He saved people." "Yeah, we thought so too," said Leo. "And then until we found out he was the monster." "Got it right here, Leo," said Bill. Bill walked over with a brown folder in his hand. Leo took it and flipped it open. He turned a page and something cracked behind his stony expression. "Here," he said, and then I saw him wince. He slapped me hard across the cheek. I stumbled. The man holding me yanked me up again. My heart tingled. "She was my goddaughter," said Leo. "Sweet as sugarcane. 8 years old. Agatha." He turned the file so I could see it. Clipped to the page was a photo of a little girl astride a tricycle. A black knot of dread began to well in my stomach. Here's little Agatha. It took her in the night. Gandhi and his men. They even had a shadow creature with them, working for him. It broke the window to her bedroom and pulled her right out from the second floor. There was a trail of black muck leading right to her bed. "He wouldn't," I said. "He would never kidnap a child." "He was seen," he shouted. But she wasn't. Not ever again. And we looked, don't you know, we looked. He either fed it to that thing or killed it himself. If he'd sold it to some of the clan, I would have heard. She would have got free, reached out. I'm sorry that happened," I said, "but I can promise you it wasn't him." He slapped me again, on the other cheek this time, and the room blurred and my ears started to ring. When my vision cleared, he was staring out the window at a gray afternoon. "That's just one of about 10 kidnappings we can pin on him. 10 kids who were taken and never seen again. Blood on his hands. But he's dead, you say. So I say, that's blood on your hands." He went over to his cart stocked with bottles and poured himself a shot of brown liquor. Downed it in one swallow. "Now, Where's this associate you say is still alive? I don't know. I don't know. I decided to come clean about H. I had let the cat out of the bag already, and it's not as if I had information that would lead them to him. I didn't even know where he lived. Leo's goon had me by the neck, and I felt his grip tighten. You were taking the girl to him. No, to a loop, not to him. What loop? I don't know, I lied. He hadn't told me yet. Bill cracked his knuckles. He's playing dumb, Leo. He thinks you're a sucker. It's fine, said Leo. We'll find him. Nobody hides from me in my city. What I really want to know is, what do you do with them? Your victims. Nothing, I said. We don't have victims. He grabbed the file off the table where he dropped it, flipped the page, and shoved it in my face. Here's one of the kids your grandpa saved. We found him 2 weeks later. Does he look saved to you, huh? It was a photo of a dead person, a little boy, maimed, horrible. He punched me in the stomach, and I doubled over, groaning. Is it some kind of sick family business? Is that it? He kicked me, and I fell to the floor. Where is she? Where's Agatha? I was saying, I don't know, or trying to, while he kicked me twice more, until I could hardly breathe, and my nose was leaking blood all over the floor. Get him up, Leo said, disgusted. God damn it, now I gotta get the carpet steamed again. I was hauled up by my arms, but my legs wouldn't take my weight, so I knelt. I was gonna kill Gandhi, said Leo. I was gonna kill that sick son of a bitch with my own hands. Gandhi's dead, Leo, said Bill. Gandhi's dead, Leo repeated. Then I guess you'll have to do, Junior. What time is it? Almost 6, said Bill. We'll kill him in the morning. Make a thing of it. Invite the troops. You're wrong, I whispered, voice trembling. You're wrong about him. How do you want it, kid? Drowning or shooting? I can prove it. How about both? Said Bill. Nice idea, Bill. One time for him, one time for dear old Grandpa. Now get him out of here. That night, they turned off the light in my cell for the first time. I lay aching in the thin dark, wishing my body would disappear, wrestling with my thoughts. I worried for my friends. Were they being beaten, tortured, threatened? I worried for Noor and what they were planning to do with her. What would she have been better off if I hadn't tried to help her at all? If I had listened to H and aborted the mission when he told me to? Yes. Almost certainly, yes. I admit I worried for myself, too. Leo's goons have been threatening me since I arrived, but for the first time their promise to kill me felt genuine. Leo didn't need anything from me anymore. He wasn't trying to get information out of me. He seemed only to want to watch me die. And what was all this madness about my grandfather? I didn't think for a second that any of it could be true, but how could anyone? My one thought was that whites had framed him, staging kidnappings and killings to look as if Abe had committed them in the hopes that Leo's clan might have killed him and done the whites' work for them. As for my grandfather being identified at the scenes of some of these crimes, a point Leo had emphasized, the whites were masters of disguise. Maybe one of them had dressed like him, or made a lifelike mask. There was a sudden loud banging at my cell door. This was it. They had come for me. They hadn't even waited until morning. The hatch in the door slid open. Portman. It was Leo. I was surprised, but then it made sense. He wanted to pull the trigger himself. Get over here. I got up from the cot and stood before the hatch. The whites framed my grandfather, I said, not because I thought he'd believe me, but because I needed to say it. Shut your goddamn trap. He paused to collect himself. You know this lady? He held a photo up to the hatch. I was so thrown off by this unexpected pivot that it took me a moment to react. It was a snapshot of a dyed blonde diva in white gloves and a feathered hat. She was holding a can of Drano, and she was, it seemed, singing to it. The Baroness. Remember, I did shout out Dad earlier. Thank you for doing the Baroness. That's the Baroness, I said, grateful my memory hadn't gone blank. Leo lowered the picture. He observed me for a moment with his brow furrowed. I couldn't read him at all. Had I passed a test? Or had I said the wrong thing? We made some calls, he said finally. Your associates told us you stopped through the Flamingo. Naturally, we were concerned, so we put in a call to our friends down there to see if you left anyone alive. Much to my surprise, not only did you comport yourselves as gentlemen and ladies, you also took care of some business I'd been meaning to handle. I was floored. Business? Those idiot road warriors who act like they run things, I've been meaning to go to Florida and stamp them. You saved me the trouble. It was, no problem. I was trying to sound calm and collected, not like someone who was still half expecting to be killed. Leo chuckled and looked at the floor as if embarrassed. You might be wondering why a big shot like me cares about some tourist loot. Well, I wouldn't. Except, my sister lives there. The Baroness? Her real name's Donna. She likes the weather down there. He shook his head and muttered to himself. She takes a couple of opera lessons. Are you letting me go? Normally, a good word from my sister would be enough to get your death sentence commuted, but you got friends and interest in places. I do? He slapped shut the view hatch. A key turned in the lock and the door opened. We were standing a few feet apart, nothing now between us. Then he stepped aside, and there, striding down the hall toward me, was Miss Peregrine. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, and then she spoke. Jacob, come out of there at once. She was angry with me, but her face was so etched with the pain of worry and her eyes so wide with relief that I knew she would open her arms when I ran to her, and she did, and I hugged her tight. Miss Peregrine, I'm so sorry. She patted my back and kissed me on the forehead. Save it for later, Mr. Portman. I turned to Leo. What about my friends? Waiting in the loading dock. And Nor? His expression soured instantly. Don't push it, kid. And don't ever come back here. Helping my sister was you get out of jail free card, but you only get one. Leo's men escorted us down the hallways, through Leo's club and the kitchen, and out to the loading dock. In the weak light of dawn, I saw Emma and Bronwyn waiting, and beside them, the white shirt and gray slacks that I knew belonged to Millard. When I saw them whole and standing and unhurt, the shudder of relief I felt was almost like a chill. I hadn't realized until that moment how dimmed my hopes had become. "Oh, my bird, thank the birds," Bronwyn sang, clasping her hands as Miss Peregrine and I approached them. "I told you he'd be fine," Millard said. "Jacob can take care of himself." "Fine?" Emma said, going pale as she looked me over. "What did they do to you?" I hadn't seen a mirror in a while, but between my busted nose and other injuries, I must have looked fearful. Emma hugged me. For a moment it didn't matter what had happened between us. It just felt good to have her in my arms again. Then she hugged a little too tight, and pain ricocheted across my cracked ribs. I sucked in my breath and pulled away. I assured her I was okay, though my head felt like a balloon that was about to pop. "Where's Enoch?" I said. "In the acre," said Millard. "Thank God." "He escaped that horrible diner," said Emma, "then called your house and told Miss P everything that had happened, and they tracked us here." "We owe him our lives," said Millard. "That's something I never thought I'd say." "You can catch up on the way back to the acre," said someone with a French accent, and I turned to see Miss Cuckoo standing near the exit with another Imbrin. She wore an electric blue dress with a tall silver collar, and her expression was flat. Neither she nor the other Imbrin betrayed any trace of happiness at seeing us. "Come. There is a car waiting." Leo's men watched as we walked out, their eyes and guns trained on us. I thought again of Nor and the fact that we were leaving her here in some form of captivity. I felt awful about it. Not only had we failed the mission, I had probably consigned her to a worse fate than if I'd left her alone entirely. The Imbrans bundled us out of the loading dock and into a big car. It lurched away from the curb before the doors had even closed. "Miss Peregrine?" I said. She turns. Okay. She turned slightly, her face in profile. "It would be better," she said, "if you didn't speak." And that is the end of chapter 17. I told you, it kind of wrapped it up pretty neat. We're almost done. Not me, not you. Okay. At least Bronwyn is okay. Okay is relative. Remember, they never got her treated. They just went to lunch. And then they got captured.
Sorry about the door.
Yeah,
I wasn't in there. The wind blew it closed.
I was like, oh man, Dave's just got an attitude about something.
No, I heard it slam from the kitchen, and I thought you did that.
No.
I'm like, I'm not even in there.
Yeah.
Sorry. What? It's very.
Oh, the window's open?
Yeah.
There's a storm. There's a storm and the wind blew that. Oh my god, that was an intense 2 chapters. It absolutely was. Everybody says hi. Okay. Lady Aoife says hi. Dave didn't like the ending of the book. It's not the ending of the book. We have one more chapter. I missed so much when I fell asleep. Yeah, you did. Heading over now since it's windy as fuck. Yeah, I feel you. Do we want to do cat facts? Because we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And I like the cat fact for today. The cat breed that we're going to cover is the Donskoi. Every week we do cat facts. If you're not familiar, I got this giant book of cats, and we read a little bit about cats each week as a little bit of a palate cleanser in case it ends on a cliffhanger, which it didn't, but we still do cat facts. My weather warning is giving me anxiety. Yes. Same. I am afraid of tornadoes. I was really worried about going live, and I was like, what if a tornado warning goes off while I'm live and I don't get the weather alert because I'm live? And I feel you. The Donskoi. Okay. The Donskoi's startling hairless appearance may look worrisome at first glance, but the distinctive feature is simply the result of a mutant gene. This mutation was first observed in Russia in 1987 when a woman named Alina Kovaleva rescued a kitten with a tortoiseshell fur. Within a few months, the kitten began to lose its hair, despite any treatment Kovaleva attempted. A few years later, the hairless cat mated with a tomcat in the neighborhood, producing a litter of kittens who eventually lost all of their hair as well. Intrigued, Irina Nemekina, a breeder, adopted one of the hairless kittens and continued the genetic line, producing more litters of hairless kittens. Nemekina called the breed Don Sphinx, in honor of the Don River in Russia and the cat's sphinx-like appearance, and it was later called the Donskoi. Despite its obvious similarities to the Sphinx breed, the two are not related. But they do share the rare features of hairlessness. This characteristic gives Donskois unique grooming needs compared to other cats. Although they can't be brushed, they do need regular baths and must be wiped down every day to distribute the oils produced by their skin. In addition to their bald appearance, this medium-sized breed has large ears, almond-shaped eyes, and long webbed toes. Their lack of fur means that Donskois are much more sensitive to hot and cold temperatures and even sunburn than other cats. For this reason, it is best that they remain indoor cats, but their friendly, affectionate, and loyal temperaments make them perfect companions. Look at all. Sunburn kitties. I like that that's what you came away with. Sunburn kitties. Oh my god, we really cut it almost directly for time. I thought we were gonna go over. Glad we didn't. We hit it right on the money. Right on the money. Oh man, that was a lot. They would have such cute little crochet sweater. Oh yeah, you make them a little tiny little vest. Good night, Lady Eva. Thanks for sticking out. Thanks for sticking out for this long. I know it's cutting it very close to time for some people that go work in the morning and have to do stuff early. By the way, got a haircut and shave, so let me get some more yarn for tiny kitty sweaters. Yes. But that was a whole lot of chunk of content and like a lot of different people that I was like, I literally up until the time only knew how I was gonna do. Like, I knew I had voices blocked for all but one of the characters, and I had no idea what was gonna come out of my mouth right up until the time. So there are too many people in those 2 chapters that I was just like, oh man, this is going to be a whole endeavor. So thank you for trekking through that with me. We do this every week, every Tuesday. If you're new, we will be continuing with the same book next week. If you want to follow up on any of the previous content that I've done, you can go to the YouTube link in my bio. It will take you to all the lives and all the recordings of Peregrines that I've done, save one that I gotta edit. But thank you for joining me. We are now going to go to the game stream in the Discord for everybody in the know. So if you want to find me there, I'm going to be playing more Outer Worlds and just doing my best. I'm doing my best, I swear. We're going to continue with that, and I will see you all next Tuesday at 8 Central. We will conclude the last and final chapter of Book 4, Map of Days. So, thank you guys for joining me.